Welcome to Getting Personal with Daphne Bugler and Isabella Holtz, your go-to podcast for all things emotional. Tune in weekly as we're joined by familiar faces from the worlds of sport, music, film, activism, and everywhere in between to talk about how emotions have shaped people's lives. Daphne, I know you're so excited about this guest today.
I'm honestly such a big fan. I feel like I've been waiting for this interview for so long because I just hear so many great things about her.
I've been listening to her latest album all week, and there are so many songs I'm now obsessed with.
Literally same. There are so many really relatable songs, and it's just so emotional. What I loved about this, I feel like we were just on the phone with one of our friends. It was so open and such a great conversation.
Right. Shall we introduce our guest for today?
Yes, let's do it. I'm so excited.
At 21, our guest has already had over 9 years of experience in the entertainment industry, having been cast at just 12 years old for a leading role on the hit US TV show Nashville, alongside her younger sister Maisy. The show gave them a unique opportunity to not only act, but to sing and even write songs for the series as well. They have since performed together as a duo for years and have even released a children's book together.
After her family moved to Nashville from their home in rural Ontario, Canada, Lennon grew up on camera. Since Nashville, the TV show, ended in 2018, she's launched an incredible solo career, collaborating with some of the biggest artists in the charts right now, including Liam Payne, the Chainsmokers, Meghan, Trainor, and Jonas. And in April this year, she released her debut studio album, 321. Not only does she have an extraordinary musical talent, but she has a rare ability to tap into emotions with her songwriting and a beautiful connection with her listeners. Her songs are raw and personal and reflect a wisdom well beyond her years.
Today we are getting personal with Lennon Stella.
We wanted to start off just by asking you, we were doing a big deep dive today into all of your music. And you have a song, Older Than I Am, which is on your most recent record. And we just wanted to ask you about that because it talks about so many emotional things in it, and it sounds to us like it's so personal. So what was kind of the inspiration for writing that song, and how did that kind of emotional journey for you come about?
Yeah. So this one was written at this writing camp I did for the album, which is literally I just got together all my favorite writers and producers and everyone I really vibe with. And we all went to Cabo and did this really awesome writing camp, which I had never really done anything like for my own music. So it was very cool. And there was just a very fluid vibe going around, and everybody kind of just understood me really well. And all the people that were writing, so there was other sessions going on when I was in mine, and everyone was writing for me, which was a whole new experience. I've never had people write for me like that before. And it was all people that I've written with so much before, and I've vented to many times. So it was really cool because that session, I was not in. I literally, at dinner, they put headphones in and played me it, and I was like, what in the world? There's 3 songs on the album that were written like that when I wasn't in the room, and I just kind of vented before the sessions, telling everybody how I was feeling, and then everyone would go into their own sessions and write, and I would go into mine and write, and that one was written like that. So it's kind of insane how connected I feel to it, having not written it. And so, yeah, it was a whole different experience. That one and Fear of Being Alone are the two that I wasn't actually in.
When you write music, is that a real outlet for you for anything emotional when you're going through? Is it do you always turn to writing, or is there a specific emotion that maybe you write the best songs from?
I mean, I go through waves where I feel flooded with emotions and whatever the feeling is. And I'm the first thing I want to do is write about it and make it into a song. And then there's definitely times when when I don't feel like that. Like, to be entirely honest, when like all of quarantine happened, I was feeling like the biggest flood of emotions. And the last thing I wanted to do was put it into a song. I was so like, I felt my creativity was like stunted and like stopped for a second. So it definitely comes and goes in waves where I feel like instantly like, okay, yeah, I need to write this out and like make it into a song that I can sing, and it feels so therapeutic. And then there's times when I just physically, I cannot turn it into a song, and I just need to like bathe in whatever it is I'm feeling and let myself just like sink into it and not try to make something clever out of it.
If we dive into some of the emotions we'd really love to talk to you about today, I'd be really interested to hear about your experiences with fear, because listening to your new album, it feels so vulnerable. A lot of the music that you're putting out there, it's very personal to you. And like Daphne mentioned, older than I am, sorry. It's watching that music video and listening to the lyrics. It's so beautifully personal. There's so many just wonderful home video elements of that. And that must be really scary in a way for you to put that out there, because it's not only bearing your soul in terms of the lyrics, it's also really putting a lot of your childhood and your memories out there. So I'd be really interested to hear how, if that was very scary for you, or if at this point in your life it just feels very comfortable to share yourself like that with your fans.
I mean, to be honest, like, I think because my sister and I were on this TV show when we were so little. We were on the show called Nashville, and that started filming when I was 12 and Maisy was 8. So it's pretty much been, I've gotten so comfortable with that, you know, with like the oversharing and the like being completely open book and having every phase of my, you know, growth and teenage years and childhood kind of just out there anyways. And, you know, from like 12 to 18 filming that show, it was like every day of filming. And obviously you just naturally go through so many like changes and just evolution through those like very pivotal years of 12 to 18. So I've kind of gotten used to that. Like, so I feel like that doesn't really scare me anymore, as far as like, I think it's kind of already out there. Like there's so many, everything is pretty much already out there from the time I was 12 and so on. So the baby stuff is like more comfortable, I would say.
Did you find being on Nashville from such a young age, did you kind of have to mature or develop like a real emotional resilience and maturity from that young age, to the point like where you were almost ahead of everyone else, or you were having to kind of be prepared for things, or capable of dealing with things that probably most like 12-year-olds don't have to deal with? Did that come to you at that young age, or was it something that was really hard to get used to?
Honestly, I think, I don't even know what it was exactly, but my parents, pretty much from the time I was a baby, and my sister as well, like we always just hung out with their adult friends, and I was literally more comfortable with adults than I was with kids from forever. Like my mom always said that. So I feel like when the show started, it definitely was that, like it was all adults. Like we were the only kids. My sister and I like were the only kids on the set, and everyone just treated us like adults, because that's just kind of how it works. And when you're filming and you're kind of going at it for, you know, long days, you just kind of grow into that like role very quickly of having like the adult responsibilities and the adult pressures. But honestly, that's probably what would have happened anyways, naturally, like because just of who we are in general. So it didn't feel like forced or uncomfortable or not organic at all. It was definitely like, it felt very comfortable to us.
I have to say, I completely adore the relationship that you and your younger sister Maisy have together. It is so sweet. And you can so clearly see the love between the both of you. Very, very lovely, strong sisterly bond. I have an older sister, so I find sibling relationships really interesting, and I love hearing about my friends and their siblings. I find that so fascinating, the different dynamics that you come across. And I've heard you and Maisy both in interviews or wherever. You've often said that you're each other's best friends, or you call each other best friends, which is so lovely. And like my sister, I love her dearly. I wouldn't call her my best friend. Sorry, Charlotte. If she's listening, I really hope she's listening.
There's a lot of people like that, for sure. I think it's like, that's also totally normal, and also a cool thing to have that relationship where it's like more sisterly than best friend. Like, I think it's just, there's so many different dynamics you can have with siblings.
That's so true. But I'd be interested to hear more. Is like your relationship, you're very close now, I can see that. Was it always that way? Did you drift apart whilst filming? Because that must have been a very tense atmosphere, having like you're living together and you're filming together and you're doing music together. Like, was that just a bit overwhelming at times?
Absolutely. I mean, we were there. I mean, just as any like sibling, spending every hour of the day together, living together. And we also did school together. So we would be in between shots and in between scenes, we would go in and we would have a very small space with 2 tutors. And it was just like, it was so much, of time together. I think we handled it like the best we knew how to, but oh my gosh, there were so many times where we'd be like ripping each other's hair out, and they'd be like, action. And we'd be like, smile. Like, it was all the time. But it was for sure, it gets like sisterly. Absolutely. But I feel like when I started kind of going off into my own world of like the music stuff and literally moving out of the house, I feel like we all of a sudden were like, I'm spending time with you because I want to, not because I'm like forced to. And yeah, I mean, we've always been super tight. Like I've been obsessed with her since the time she was literally born. Like genuinely, I was like, we've always been so tight. There was never, it was always a very rare sister thing, but I would say like in the past like 2 years, it's been definitely like we're more friends rather than the sister thing now.
I totally find that with like my relationship with my sister. When she moved out to go to university, it was literally the next day we were instantly like texting each other all the time, and we'd never done that before. Like, we weren't that close, and it was once she moved out, I think, and we kind of became young women, that's when our friendship really kind of got started.
And there's kind of like a point when I think you guys level in age, like where I feel like Maisy, once she hit like 15 even, it was like all of a sudden I was like, okay, cool, we can like talk like at the same level, like there's an age that happens when you guys get to like the same playing field. And I think when that happens, it's so much easier versus having to be like older sister, younger sister vibe, Yeah, I think it happens somewhere along the way.
So Lennon, I'd love to know, if we like hone in on the idea of fear, is there an experience that kind of stands out to you where you felt kind of fear in sort of an overwhelming way, or you really had to kind of battle with that, whether it's like a feeling of like anxiety or stress or like stage fright or anything like that? Is there something that kind of stands out to you as a moment where you were like really had that fear, and then maybe like how did you push through that, or what was it like afterwards?
Oh man, I mean, fear is something that I have such a just intense relationship with. I've kind of learned, I think just being in the public eye and kind of having those pressures really come out of nowhere. Like I think because my sister and I were thrown into it in a very strange way. There was never like this, I mean, me personally, I never had this like desire to do it. I got asked to just audition for the show. So it wasn't, I think a lot of people like work their lives to gain up the courage and like get ready to like be in front of people or be on camera and be on a TV show and know that it's airing. And I think I was so aloof and so oblivious to what was happening for so long and just kind of riding the wave and enjoying every second of it, but really not quite understanding how many people were watching and how many people, knew about my existence and cared about it. So I think the fear and everything started kicking in later, like really when I got off the show, I would say, and I was going into my own, like this solo music, and that was so scary. And, you know, not knowing how people were there was so many elements, like one, not having to be with Maisy, which I knew that was a big expectation and a hope that everybody had. And then also having it not be country music, which is obviously what the show was. And there's so many things that came into it that I think all of a sudden were so overwhelming. But I don't know. I've learned I think it's actually the power of now that this book said this to me, and it was like, oh, it just feels such a good like life motto of to like use fear as your compass and like actually listen to fear, and if you're scared of it, you should do it. And you're scared of it because it excites you deep down. So I feel like I've gotten better with fear, but it's definitely something that played a big role in my life for a long time and still does, but in a totally different way now.
Do you, as like a female kind of artist, do you ever find that, you know, the music business is still so male dominated? And I know, like, especially at the top. So have you ever had experiences where you're going into a meeting and it's just like loads of men who might be like way older than you trying to tell you what they want you to sound like or what they expect you to look like or do? Or have you ever had those situations, and how did you navigate that kind of environment in relation to fear?
I mean, that is exactly what it is. I think everybody kind of has that in mind of the industry. And then when you're really in it, you realize that actually is what it is. And you kind of just have to figure out a way to like balance all of it, and balance knowing what you want and versus like being difficult and versus like being a diva. You know, there's so many different things that people will call you or people will think that you are. And trying to navigate all that when it is people that, yeah, it's not like young 20-year-old girls that are in there with me. So it's like, it's definitely, it's something you learn how to navigate, and I'm definitely still learning how to navigate it. But yeah, I think ultimately learning who you are and figuring yourself out and figuring out your own boundaries and personally, the lines that you want to cross and where your comfort zone ends. And if you want to get out of your comfort zone or whatever it is for you that feels right. And ultimately knowing that it's really your life. And it's the only reason I'm doing any of this is for, you know, to put my own music out, and it should be fun and it should be light and I should have, you know, control over it. So just kind of locking into all those very personal feelings and making it a very personal thing is kind of how I figure it out and how I navigate it.
It must have been so difficult for you as you grew into a young woman, and you've grown up a lot over the years on TV when you were in Nashville, and then suddenly you must face all this kind of criticism and judgment from the media or fans that kind of have labeled you as a certain kind of actress or musician, and then you've grown, you've aged, because that's what we do, and you've become your own person. Do you ever struggle with the kind of the judgment that you might receive from fans who kind of still think of you as, or still want you to be that 12-year-old, that preteen kind of TV star? How do you deal with that?
It's definitely something, I don't know. It's weird because I have a weird thing with this because it's so prevalent all the time. And I've kind of just figured out how to not let it affect me. And because I think it's not really fair for myself to let it affect me and stunt my growth, because of course that's natural for people to see me a certain way and love me a certain way and then see me grow or see me stretch in ways that they didn't expect. Of course, that's like a natural human response to be like, no, please, like, stay the little girl with glasses, like stay 12, like stay innocent. Of course, that's like natural. And I think that I was talking to my mom about this the other day, because I think we subconsciously all have this like weird thing with change. and this weird like feeling and stigma with it that I think is natural. But at the same time, of course, I'm going to change if I'm going from 12 to 21. There's obviously massive changes that are going to happen. And I don't want to keep myself in the same spot to make everybody comfortable. I need to be able to stretch and grow and evolve how I feel good. So it's definitely something I think about, because it's uncomfortable changing and growing in front of like, it feels like all your like grandparents are watching you. Like I have so many grandparents. It just is like, they're all like so disappointed that you're not wearing a like turtleneck anymore. But like, but yeah, I've just kind of learned how, I feel like the biggest thing is when I think about it, I'm like, that's not fair to do to myself, like to stop my growing, you know? So it's kind of how I deal with it.
Moving on like a tiny bit to love and the concept of love as an emotion. I just wanted to talk briefly because I was reading an interview earlier where you told a story about how you were going out with a guy for like 6 months or something, and he had a girlfriend of 6 years. I think that was a story that you said. And I was just wondering, like, that just stood out to me as like a moment where, how do you then like, from that moment and from that experience, how does that change the way, or did that change the way you viewed love and the idea of finding it again?
Oddly enough, it didn't. It had like, I had a more of like all around human being like, everyone sucks. Like how is people? It was more like I just lost faith in humanity, rather than it being like a thing of losing faith in men or like losing faith in finding love. I think I was just disappointed in people and how anyone's like capable of doing that to another person. So as far as like love goes, somehow I would have thought that I did, but I actually didn't have that response. Like I've never like really like searched for finding love. I've kind of just floated and let it kind of come to me if it comes to me, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. But as far as like when it does come to me, or when it did, I wasn't scared of it because of the relationship I was in, where there was like a massive crazy cheating happening. But I also think that if I was more invested in the relationship, it would have been, but I think because it was like 6 months and it felt pretty light, it was more just like, oh, like I just moved on. I was like, that is so yucky. And it didn't sting as much as it would have if I was the one that was in it for the 6 years, of course.
Firstly, what an idiot. But I think I read the same article, and what stuck with me was that you befriended the other girlfriend, didn't you?
Yep. It was like straight out of like a movie, like a girl power movie. But no, I mean, I think the way that we both handled it and the way that she, as being the one of 6 years and I was like the other girl, the way that she made me feel and the way that she treated me and wanted us to get through it together, I thought was so cool as another person and as a girl to a girl. I thought it was just so sick and yeah, I loved how she went about it. So we kind of kindled and had a friendship from that and just, yeah, I think we kind of went through it together versus I think naturally you're like, ugh, who is that girl and why'd she do that? You know, but I think she trusted and knew that I clearly had zero clue and wanted to really get through it together, which I thought was very, very cool.
It's so mature story of women supporting women. I love that.
Yeah,
absolutely. So in general, then, what does love mean to you as a concept, or like what are some moments in your life where you've really felt love or where you found love in your life?
I mean, I currently am very in love, and this is a very great and very sweet feeling. I think there's so many different aspects of love and so many different ways you can feel it. And obviously so many different versions of it, like coming from your family or your friends or whatever. But yeah, I mean, being like in love and truly in love with one person, and that security and that like just deep down, like knowing that it's there for good and that it feels so true and all these things is so rare and feels it's completely new to me, as far as like all around just like loving me as an entire being and knowing me fully and loving every part of it is very new to me. So I would say this is the first time I've really ever felt it to this degree. But I mean, yeah, love is all the things. It's kind of hard to put it into words, really.
If we kind of go from love to happiness, what are some moments, or one thing we often do with people is we say, what are these kind of bubbles of happiness you find in your life? So maybe like some mundane things like a nice cup of coffee, or like, I don't know, your pets or something like that. What are some things, like small things, that bring you joy in your life on a daily basis?
My goats. I got some goats. They're happy. Goats are good for the soul. My dog that I've had for every part of my like every big part. I got her right when I moved out. So she comes to tour like all touring. As long as I'm not in Europe, she comes with me through all tours and all traveling. So she's my ride or die. I got a new cat. These are all good things. I feel like the law of attraction, I don't know if you guys know of anything about that, but that takes like a big part of my life, and a majority of my happiness comes from the concept of law of attraction and all the books that come along with it. My sister, of course, my mom. I think moving out to the countryside makes me really happy. It reminds me a lot of my childhood. We grew up like on so much land and so far out from everyone and everything, with literally no TV or any internet. So coming back to this like part of my life is very like nostalgic and feels very right for me to be further out of town. So that makes me happy. And yeah, there's lots of things that make me happy. I'm feeling like trying my best to kind of float through life and enjoy the things that do make me happy right now, because the world is in such a strange place and it's so hard for me to not like soak that up like a sponge. So just trying to kind of like find those things and sink into those things that do make me feel good right now.
You mentioned like you grew up kind of in the countryside, and it's so funny because I grew up in like kind of similar area to you. I was just outside of Toronto, like maybe 2 hours north.
Oh, really?
Like, yeah. So I'm from Toronto, but I grew up like going to like this farm, which was in like, I don't know if you know, like Prince Edward County. It's like up near Kingston. Yeah. And
That's
we had
awesome.
no internet. Like we had a like dial up, I think, or something. But when we were there, it was like so therapeutic as a child. And it's something that I almost like miss now. I wish like I could go back sometimes to that off-grid life. And like, do you ever do that? Do you ever just say like, I'm just going to have a detox for a bit?
I definitely try to take those moments where I can do that and feel comfortable. But I find that like when I truly do, and when I actually put my phone away for like days at a time, which I've done, but I feel like for some reason it makes me feel more anxious. And because I'm like, what if somebody needs me, or what if like anything, like with my management and any, like I talk to everyone so constantly, like all day, every day. So I try to do it in ways where I can still feel comfortable. And that's kind of why I love living out here. 'Cause I just experience that daily. It's so far out and on so much land, and is like, all I see is green. So I get that feeling without fully having to like detox and like completely escape it. So I feel like I've kind of balanced like finding the best of both worlds.
If we can move on and delve a bit deeper into some more emotions, we've heard that so many of your songs have been inspired by your life. Like we mentioned that cheating ex-boyfriend of yours, and that inspired your song Bad. And then similarly with Breakaway, is inspired by your parents' divorce. Could we delve a bit more into like the kind of emotions that inspire songs like that? What are some emotions that kind of that spurn you to write? Is it more sadness, or is it those feelings of love and like your love for your family that inspire you to make music?
I mean, it definitely, I kind of want to write about them all. Any feeling that's heightened and like an intense, overwhelming feeling is typically when I want to write about it. When something's like meh or like halfway, whatever kind of feeling, I don't feel as inspired as I do, of course, when it's like taking over everything. But there's all different, like there's lots of it where it's about like my sister and exactly that, my love for her and that kind of relationship. Like Save Us on the album's about that, and Weakness and Huey Lewis were all about Maisy and our relationship, and some of that kind of in the protecting, which isn't as happy or like blissful necessarily, but still the base of it is like loving and yeah, just that protectiveness that you feel for anyone you love. And then, there's so much of it is when I feel like that uncertainty and that like feeling like the ground just got pulled out from underneath your feet, which was very much what Breakaway was about, which is more of that, like that not knowing what's going on and that separation and that feeling very like lost, and definitely not a positive feeling. I also feel very inspired when I feel that way to write. Probably the most, I would say, is when I'm feeling those feelings. I think pure love songs are, so you can't really write unless you're like actually purely in love, in my opinion. Like I can never put myself in that space unless I'm actually feeling it. So we'll see the songs that I write now. Like, I don't know what's going to come out. I'm scared it's going to be like bubblegums and like rainbows and all this. Like, I really have no idea, but I feel like, just whatever feeling I'm feeling that's intense and heightened, I'm like, that's when I'm the most inspired.
When you write about something that's so personal and comes from kind of maybe a place of like deep sadness or maybe like heartbreak or grief or something like that, do you find that then you write the song and that emotion's in it and then you maybe play it on stage every night? Does it make it hard to let go of those moments because every night you're up there sort of almost reliving it for a few minutes? Or do you kind of write the song and then that song and that emotion are separate afterwards?
It's different for every song, I think. There's definitely ones that hurt me every time I sing, like Older Than I Am, which is one that, like I said, I actually didn't write. And I think maybe that's why. But when I can barely get through it every time I sing it. And then there's songs that like Bad, which was obviously a very intense emotion when I wrote it, but pretty much the second it was off my chest, I was like, it didn't hit me in the chest. There's like few songs that I think I relive every time I sing it. And it's more so it kind of, once it's out in the world, it becomes everyone else's. And when I'm singing it live, I'm more like feeling everybody else feel it versus like, it's not so internal,
If we could explore further into that kind of, we've spoken about sadness. Can you tell us a bit more about maybe some experiences that you have felt personally and what sadness means to you?
I mean, I think, everybody feels things differently and takes things differently. I think personally, I came from a very intense feeling family. Like my mom and my dad both, and my sister, of course, like we are so intense, like such intense feelers. So we just take everything in very intensely and take it really to heart. So I think growing up with my parents as parents and learning from them, and kind of, they're just such feelers and such, I don't know. I think growing from that, I've always taken things very intensely. So just kind of growing up in general, I think you go through all the things and you feel all the things, but everything being very heightened, having a lot of people watching you feel them. And then, things like a divorce or anything really, breakup, or there's so many things that, you go through that make you feel sadness. And I've also, like, both my parents, we've all struggled with just anxiety in general and panic disorder. So that also gives me a feeling of sadness when I go through really intense, very anxiety, ridden moments of like panic attacks and all that definitely carry a weight of sadness. So I think I kind of go through it all and then try to find that like peace inside me. I try to let myself feel it entirely and bathe in it and then let it all go. But yeah, sadness is a very prevalent feeling that I also want to feel sometimes.
You mentioned that you've learned so much from your parents about how to kind of handle emotions or also how to feel them. When you were working on the set of Nashville, did you find that when you were among all these adults, just the two of you, did you learn quite a lot from the people you were around and the older actors about how to navigate the industry and how to did you learn anything about how to deal with kind of your emotions or the fear of everything from them?
For sure. I mean, everyone on the show has pretty much been doing it for a while, and it's a very different world, the acting and TV and movie world, than the music industry. It's just completely different. So learning was a lot of learning about that had the acting world and how to kind of figure out how to have like directors and everyone kind of just learning how to be a professional in that sense. And I think going from that to the music industry that world is so much more professional, I think, and so much more like you kind of show up and you have a job and you do it, and you have to be very prepared and very ready. Whereas the music industry is way more go with the flow, and you can be many of hours late and nobody cares, versus like where I come from, I'm like, it's very like everyone's very on time. And like, I feel like I had like a stick up my butt when I came into the music industry, and everyone was like, what are you doing? Like, you can chill out. But yeah, I mean, it's very different. So I would say more so I learned just about being professional in general and learning how to like stand up for yourself in certain ways, and also learning how to just bend in other ways when it's time to bend and when it's time to just listen. But not as much in the music industry, I guess. It didn't carry over as much.
Lennon, it just sounds like for someone who's so young and in such a kind of cutthroat, busy, hectic industry, you have such a healthy and well-rounded way to deal with your emotions and to process them through your songwriting and through all sorts of other ways. But I think our last emotion is a bit of a tricky one to discuss, I guess. But what if we look into anger? What kind of experiences have you had with anger, or what kind of memories are brought up when we mention anger? Are you ever an angry person, or are you kind of like you deal with it through your own personal ways and are very zen?
It's interesting. I feel like it takes a lot to get me angry. It's pretty rare that I'm angry. I feel pretty much every other thing before I feel anger. If someone does something to really like piss me off, I feel like I get sad and hurt, more so just like disappointed, I guess. And anytime someone does something disappointing, I just all around am like, everyone sucks. I just go through a phase of like, literally, it gets so broad in my brain for some reason. I never take it personally. I think that's something I've learned that is like such a big thing that I find so helpful is like, I never, like same thing when the guy cheated, it never like reflected personally on me. So I never like take it really to heart. Of course, there's times when I do, and it's very personal if it's like family related or anything like that. And I think as a Leo, I definitely can get angry and I definitely can say things like my sister and my mom would definitely say that I say things very harshly and that I don't realize how harsh they come out. It's just how I am naturally. I guess I can say things where I don't really, I can't really sugarcoat some things, I guess, when I'm angry more than any other emotion. I don't think it through as much. So if it takes a lot to get me angry, but when I am, I'm pretty blunt and I say things exactly as I feel with zero filter. That is the best way I would describe my anger. And I think anybody who knows me would say the same thing. And pretty much anyone who knows any Leo.
You mentioned like star signs. Is that something you really like believe in? And how does it help you kind of process things at all? Like having that framework?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Since the time I was like, literally as far back as I can remember. I think my mom has just always been so into that and taught us pretty young about all that. And then I just kind of had my own relationship with it growing up. But yeah, it definitely helps me also navigate other relationships in my life and learning why people are the way they are. And it helps me be more patient, I think, with people. And then also helps me feel understood in myself and reading about my sign and reading about, maybe my natural instincts being this way or that way. And it just helps you feel very understood.
You've inspired me to go read my horoscope now. I want to find out what the rest of August has in hold for me.
What sign are you?
Oh yeah. Could you tell me more? I'm Cancer. What am I? Am I good?
I'm a Cancer. Wait, what are you? What are you both? Cancer.
So I'm a Virgo.
Cancer and a Virgo. You guys are both very calm. I love that. I don't know. I can't even, it's more like I have so many people in my life that when I know someone like that has their sign, I always mesh it with like, oh, so-and-so's a Cancer, so-and-so's a Virgo. And then I feel like I instantly know you because I'm like, every Virgo is the same. No, I'm just kidding. But I feel like, I definitely, it's interesting to read about. And I feel like it always makes people feel less alone and understood in a good way.
I like doing that with obviously growing up in Hong Kong. I love the Chinese zodiac. Yeah. So I'm an ox. So I'm like, well, I'm very trustworthy. I'm stable. Like I'm a kind, hardworking person. And then I know Daphne, you're a rat, so you're really sneaky. I am a rat. And, yeah, you're just a bit sneaky. Oh. But I don't know many of the others. I just know what my one is. Brilliant. Well, Lennon, Stella, thank you so much for joining us today and for letting us get really personal with you and talking about all things emotions. It's been brilliant, and we really, really appreciate you coming on today.
Yeah, I appreciate all the questions you guys asked. It's nice to go in depth instead of just like sitting on the surface for a lot of interviews. So I appreciate this as much.
Oh, thank you. We do love Honestly, to get personal.
Yeah, we love it. And it's literally like, we just sit there normally on a day-to-day basis. This is why we started the podcast. And we just have so many deep emotional conversations about like, I don't know, nothing almost sometimes, that we were just like, we just wanted to talk to people about it. So
there's been a lot of emotions in our friendship. I've already sent Daphne a voice note of me crying today. So all the emotions.
Oh, such Cancer. Okay.
Oh no, typical Cancer, typical ox.
Typical ox. Gotta love them.
So funny. But honestly, thank you. This has been so good. And thank you for being so open and like willing to do this. We really appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you guys.
Thanks for listening to Getting Personal. Don't forget you can like and subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favourite podcasts. And give us a review and a rating. It helps other listeners find us in the charts. We'll see you next time.